Over the last 10 years, Egypt has been on a development blitz that's almost hard to wrap your head around. We're talking brand new cities literally rising out of the desert, a complete reinvention of the country's infrastructure, and a total shift in its energy landscape. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the story of this massive transformation based on our source material, just to get a handle on the sheer scale of it all. How did they do it? Well, our source breaks it down into 6 key areas.
First, we'll look at the moment that really set the stage for this whole decade of change. Then, we're going to dive into the revolutions in energy and infrastructure. After that, we'll check out transportation, the rise of all these new cities, and finally, we'll dig into the big vision that, according to the source, really ties this entire thing together.
Okay, so to really get the story, you have to rewind back to 2014. The source frames this as a really pivotal moment in Egypt's history. It was a point where basically a fundamental choice had to be made. Either just stand still and stagnate, or go for broke and try to rebuild the very foundations of the country.
And this quote from our source, it just perfectly captures the incredibly ambitious spirit behind this whole period. It paints the last decade not just as a bunch of construction projects, but as a very conscious decision to completely change the country's direction, a decision that the source says came from the collective will of the people.
All right, so the first pillar of this whole transformation was energy. And the story here is a classic problem and solution narrative. The problem before 2014? A really severe energy crisis. I mean, it was affecting daily life, it was crippling industry. The solution? A massive, multi-front investment to totally reshape Egypt's power grid. I mean, this slide basically shows the transformation literally. It's like going from darkness to light. The source describes a nation that was once known for constant power outages, and then in just a few years, it becomes a country with an energy surplus. And this wasn't just about keeping the lights on at home. It was about having the reliable power needed for factories, for businesses, and for all the new infrastructure that was coming.
So, you're probably asking, how on earth did this happen so fast? Well, according to the source, the answer is a series of incredibly ambitious mega projects. 3 gigantic power plants came online. Then the discovery of the Zohr gas field. That was an absolute game changer. And it wasn't just about fossil fuels. There was a huge push into renewables, with things like the massive Ben solar park and major wind farms.
And this timeline, it just shows you the insane speed of this change. From the discovery of the Zohr field in 2015, it took only 3 years for Egypt to become totally self-sufficient in natural gas. And today, it's a major exporter of LNG, which really cements its role as a critical energy hub to the whole region.
But look, generating power is only half the battle. If you really want to fuel a modern economy, you have to connect it. So, the next major focus was connectivity. If energy is the lifeblood, then a modern network of roads, bridges, and tunnels is the circulatory system. And this was another area that saw a complete and total overhaul.
Okay, before we show you the numbers, just think for a second about what it takes to fundamentally change a country's entire road network. Our source points to one specific data point that really puts the incredible scale of this effort into perspective.
And here it is. In 2014, Egypt ranked 118th in the world for road quality. A decade later, it's ranked 18th. That is an absolutely staggering leap. And it's not just a number. It means faster, safer transport for people and for goods, cutting down travel times and connecting economic centers in a way that just wasn't possible before.
To really let that sink in, that's a jump of 100 places. This one number basically tells the story of thousands of kilometers of new highways, countless new bridges, and major arteries built all across the country to ease congestion and open up new areas for development.
And some of these projects are just straight-up engineering marvels. The Rod El Farag axis, for example, actually holds a Guinness World Record for being the widest bridge in the world. But maybe the most strategically important projects are the tunnels built under the Suez Canal. For the very first time, they create a permanent direct land link to the Sinai Peninsula, which our source argues is absolutely crucial for integrating its economy and securing the whole region.
But this infrastructure transformation didn't stop with the roads. The next frontier was modernizing how millions of people and billions of dollars in goods move through the country every single day, from public transit to global shipping. So, the key thing to get here is that this was a comprehensive approach. It wasn't just about one thing. It was about upgrading the old railways, bringing in brand new high-speed electric trains, expanding the Cairo Metro for millions of daily commuters, and launching entirely new systems like the driverless monorail.
This was all about creating a modern, integrated transport network for a fast-growing population.
You see the exact same ambition when you look at aviation. The source points to plans to literally double the capacity of Cairo International Airport from an already huge 30 million passengers a year to an incredible 60 million. The idea is to position it as a major hub for international travel and tourism.
And for trade, it's the same story. Key maritime ports were massively expanded and modernized. The goal wasn't just to make them better, it was to transform them into world-class logistics hubs that could handle the largest container ships on the planet and really anchor Egypt's position in global trade routes.
So, okay, you've got power. The country's connected. What's next? Well, the next phase of the plan was even more ambitious, pretty much redrawing the map of Egypt itself by building entirely new cities, providing mass housing, and creating new industrial zones completely from scratch.
A huge piece of this was a massive national housing project. Our source reports that over 1.5 million new housing units were built for social and middle-income families, a number it calls totally unprecedented in the country's history. This was a direct effort to improve living standards and move millions of people out of unsafe or informal housing.
And of course, you can't talk about new cities without mentioning the big one, the new administrative capital. We are talking about a project covering 170,000 fadans. I mean, that's an area larger than Singapore. It's home to Africa's tallest building, the iconic tower, and it's designed to be a new, modern center for government and business to take the immense pressure off of historic Cairo.
And this right here perfectly illustrates the economic vision. At the same time they were building cities for people, the focus was on building zones for industry. The Suez Canal Economic Zone is the crown jewel, a massive integrated area of ports and industrial zones designed to be a magnet for global investment and manufacturing, all by leveraging one of the most critical waterways in the entire world.
Okay, this brings us to the final part of the story. Our source directly takes on a really critical question. What has been the cost of this insane decade of development for the average person? And what's important is that the source material doesn't just ignore the economic challenges. It acknowledges that the last 10 years have been really tough for many Egyptians, who've had to deal with the burden of high prices and a lot of economic pressure.
But it frames these hardships as a necessary investment. The core argument here is that the current strain is the price you pay for building a fundamentally stronger and more prosperous country for the next generation, a country with better homes, reliable infrastructure, and a much more robust economy.
So, in the end, the narrative we've explored presents a story of immense ambition and incredibly rapid change. And it leaves us with one final big question to think about. What does it truly take to reshape a nation's future in just 10 years? And what are the trade-offs that come with it?